All right, we are live. So, hello, my name is Juno Lucita, and you are
I am author Blake Edward Andrew.
awesome. And can you tell us a little bit about your books and yourself?
I have just released well, I haven't just released, it's been out for 6 months, but my debut novel is called The Haunting of Chateau de Mornay. It's a paranormal gothic horror novel with some romance and spice and mystery and history in it. I've been writing since I was probably about second grade, so a long time, but this is my first novel I have published.
That is very exciting. And what inspired the idea of setting your story in this abandoned building with such dark history?
I read an article years ago. I started the book years ago, and the article was about people moving to Europe and buying old buildings and castles and chateaus and renovating them. Um, can you hear me? Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. And I was just really fascinated by that idea, and I loved it as like a haunted house possibility. I love haunted house stories, so I was like, oh, that's a great venue right there for that. So I made a fictitious one in France. Said it, it was built in 1681. I built a whole story around it, around the French Revolution as well. I'm very fascinated by that period of history and created some characters around it. And so, yeah, it's contemporary, but it goes back in time, and we visit the chateau different time periods, and the new people are renovating it and literally digging up a very nasty past.
Okay, that's awesome. And I don't know who doesn't like haunted houses because they're actually really entertaining and I love stories that are based around that. Haunted houses and haunted asylums. I've read tons of books. Um, how did the history of the French Revolution influence the narrative and the atmosphere of your book?
I just loved really the just how I guess violent the revolution was and how it just swept over the country. I was always fascinated by that, and that was just a really excellent time to put the story in and have this family, this aristocratic family. When we do go back and we visit that time period, this aristocratic family gets swept up in it, but there's a lot more going on than just like the revolution sweeping over them. They have a lot of family problems going on. There's a lot of turmoil. There's a lot of like father son uh, conflict going on and just a lot of family stuff. So it's kind of all that's happening during the wave of the revolution. It's you can see it coming toward them, and it just builds the drama in the background, and then it hits them, and it happens. And so I just thought that was a great background setting for the whole thing.
Oh, yeah, there are some great themes in this story. I'm definitely enjoying it. So I'm guessing that you always loved like history in school.
Yes, I've always been a history buff. Still am. I studied a lot of history in college. I took classes specifically on the French Revolution. I studied Roman history, a lot of history. It was a minor, but I got my degree in geography and mapping, and that's what I ended up doing for 25 years after I graduated college. And this book, writing The Haunting of Chateau de Mornay, pulled me away from my career, and it became my passion. And ultimately, I ended up quitting my career and doing this full time, which is what I'm doing right now.
That's awesome. That sounds like a great career path that you went down. Um, so how did you approach writing about such a heavy emotion in your book, like grief?
Yeah, there's a lot of emotions in the book, and a lot of it came from as I was building the story. I really wanted to bring the characters out and make them more real, and delved into my past and my own issues and traumas, and um, a lot of the characters and a lot of situations. There's just pieces of that in the book, and I love a tragic story. I really do. I've always loved a tragic story. It's part of, to me, it's part of what makes horror very interesting. If you can really delve into the people's past and uh, show like why they're acting the way they're acting and the way they react to the situation that's come upon them in the plot. And pretty much every character in the story is they've had the grief in their past, and there's they focused on that in the book, and I just fascinated by dealing with that, and it really was a cathartic experience for me writing it, getting that stuff out. I remember feeling very relieved after I would write certain sections, and just made me feel a lot better. It was almost like therapy, getting it out, and so yeah, that's where a lot of that came from, was just personal experience. Oh, hang on.
I'm sorry, I was muted.
Okay.
Um, no, that's totally what makes a story great, and all that like emotions that you went through. Tons of authors say that they always put a part of themselves in a story because that is how you write a story. Is it kind of feels a little bit based off of you.
Yes, they say write what you know. It was, for me, it was write what I know, but it was also write what was passionate. When I have authors, young authors, or people ask for, you know, questions when they come on my live show, they're like, "What's your advice?" I always say, "Write what you know." People say that, but write what you're passionate about. Like, even if it requires going and doing that research to get to know what you need to know, like write what you know, but get there to the point where you really love it and passion. So,
Definitely. And what message or feeling do you hope readers take away when they finish this novel?
uh, I've been really shocked at how many feelings I've heard people come away from so far. I didn't. I kind of had just before I had the feedback, I was hoping people would be, you know, scared, chilled. Uh, but I'm getting people saying, "Oh my gosh, that scene made my jaw drop," or "That scene was, you know, spicy, and it was also, you know, very subtle and really cool." There were some sad things. People cry at certain scenes. Um, and I've had people email me and say, "Oh my gosh, like the spicy level of this book has actually like brought my husband and I closer together." And that was something I totally did not expect, and was like, "Wow, that's super cool." So I've gotten so many different responses, and didn't see really most of that coming. I just wanted to scare people. Was pretty much the way that was in the beginning, and it's turned into so much more than that. So that makes me very happy.
Yeah, that's great. And my favorite chapter in the book is literally the first chapter, which is also very beautiful because, you it's like the first chapter of the book is usually the most important, like that first paragraph, because you want to draw your readers in. And it did have me entertained when I was reading it.
Right? Yeah. The book starts with a prologue, a very brief prologue. It's only half a page. It was actually the last thing I wrote. I felt like chapter one really jumps in really fast, gets you into the story. Everybody really does like it. They always talk about it. But I wanted a little bit more in front of that foreshadows something else that goes on. So those first two parts of the book, there's a lot of foreshadowing going on, and I also wrote chapter one initially in the early drafts of the book. Later in the book, it was going to be like chapter 20 or 25, and the book without without that being chapter one was going to be them visiting the chateau, was going to be chapter one, and I thought that's a little too slow to open a book with. It's one of the longer chapters, and they are literally just touring the chateau. And there's some scary stuff going on in there, but it didn't accelerate the way I wanted to. So I was like, I'm just gonna move chapter one or chapter 20 to chapter one, and it actually fit. And I had to make some tweaks, but yeah, it gets you into the story really fast. So I'm really glad that you like it.
It's definitely a beautiful story. Um, and how do you balance character development with maintaining the suspense and horror elements of the story And what challenges did you face in writing your characters?
I always have that. I always want to keep people on their toes when I'm writing. So there's always that horror and suspense element while I'm writing. And I've had so many, and I feel like I was successful with it. I've had a lot of people say, "Oh my gosh, like it's a page turner, but it's like I was turning the page and I really didn't know what to expect. You wrote it in such a way that anything could have happened. I was really frightened and thrilling, it's thrilling." So I kept that in mind as I was developing the characters, going back in their past and making sure that that was always informing their story as well. And yeah, that's probably my favorite part of the book is writing those characters' backstory, especially Luke, the antagonist. Going back in time, writing him, he was my favorite character to write. I really enjoyed him. He's a wily, almost Loki-esque, um, uh, complicated antagonist, and I had a lot of fun writing him. It was my favorite part of the story.
Oh yeah, character writing and developing is actually my favorite part too. But I can create characters for days. Sometimes putting the story together is a bit challenging, but making the characters is so easy and fun for me. And how much research went into this book, and what was your process of doing research?
There was a lot of research. I mean, I knew a lot about the French Revolution going into it. So like in draft one, I just flew through it, but I had to go and make sure that I had all the dates correct and everything else was correct. Because it was most people think it's a really short period of time, but it was actually a really long period of revolution. It lasted 10 plus years in France, and that's like unheard of if we think about it, like in the United States now, contemporarily. Um, but yeah, there was a lot of that, and then also I had to do a lot of research in terms of the chateau. What was it? What did they build them like in 1681? Because the chateau is falling apart in the modern day. What is when it's falling apart? What's inside the walls? What do they look like? It's not built like modern day architecture. So there was a lot of research into wallpaper, what kind of things are between the floorboards, just all these things that are in an old chateau. So
And how long did it take you to create this book and publish it?
better part, I mean, going through the entire process, probably almost 8 years. 7 years really of writing, and it was my first novel, and it was I didn't write that whole time. I had a lot of stops and starts. I got stuck a lot. I had writer's block. I shelved it for an entire year because I had family obligations that I had to take care of, and there were times when I didn't think I was even going to finish it. I really believed I was like, it's too much. I'm not going to be able to do it. So yeah, it was a long process. Definitely, book two is not taking nearly as long. Cruising right along in book two in the trilogy. So
That does give me a little bit of hope because I've been writing books since 2016 and I feel like it's taken too long and I was worried about myself to be honest.
Real quick, can you still hear me okay?
Um yeah,
You can?
I can hear you.
Good, good. My headphones just went off, so I just want to make sure we didn't run into a problem we had before. Okay, we're all
Mhm.
good.
Can you share what a day in your life and your specific writing routine?
Day in the life is, well, I stay up very late. I mean, that's the place to start. So let's talk 2 or 3 in the morning is when I'm generally going to bed. That's when I do my writing. It's quiet. I'm a night owl. This is my full-time job now, so I have total control over my hours and everything. I mean, I'm selling enough books, thankfully, that I'm able to do that. So yeah, 2 or 3 in the morning, I get up, 10, something like that, and then immediately getting ready for my show. I do a live show on TikTok for uh, 3 to 4 hours almost every weekday. unless I have some family obligations that come up. But generally, that's my TikTok schedule, and that's where I'm selling the book. But I'm also signing and packaging the books that I sold the day before, and then take them to the post office after the show. So about 4 or 5 o'clock, I get in my car. I take my box of, I sell anywhere between 30 to 55 books a day. I take all those, take them to the post office, and then I come home, I eat, and then I do like, maybe rest a little bit, and then I'm back at work. So I'm right now, another thing is taking a lot of my time is I'm working on painted edges on the novel. I'm doing red painted edges right now, and so that's taking a bit of my time as well, doing the painting on that. They look really cool. I just started selling them this previous week. So I've been working on the painting, and I love that. So I just keep going until it's late at night again, and then I start all over again. That's the process.
That's awesome. I love your schedule. I go to bed around 3 o'clock, but 3 a.m. I mean, and I suck at making a schedule. How exactly did you come by and like made your schedule to how it is now?
It was very organic. This whole endeavor was, I mean, self-publishing. I didn't know a thing about it in the beginning, and so I had to. It was trial and error. It was watching a lot of writers on TikTok, how they're successful, what are they doing, particularly on their TikTok time, and then that is really what everything revolved around. Was when I started selling the books. That's when I realized, oh my gosh, I can do this by myself. I can make a living off of this. I'm starting to move enough books. So the TikTok sales part of the day, the 3 or 4 hours, that was a central part of the day. That is what allows me to, pays me, allows me to pay my bills and stay alive and feed my children. So that was the most important thing. And then everything else kind of revolved around that period of time in the middle of the afternoon. I tried different TikTok times. I would experiment earlier in the morning. I would do later at night. I would try on the weekend. And it's really amazing how different the like demographic is based on time and day on TikTok. I really, really spent a lot of time kind of researching that until I found my sweet spot where I found like, okay, where's my most efficient amount of live time where I've got the audience that I want and they're buying the book. So that was primarily what the day revolved around. And then I just built my day around there. Okay, where can I write? And thankfully I still had time late at night to be alone. You can kind of see in the blur background here, this is my set, like where I do my live. It's blurred out, but there's the book 2 cover. I have a big screen TV behind me where I project my laptop. This is where I'm at late at night. I turn the lights off. I have these kind of like gothic candles going, flickering. They're just battery operated little remote control things, but they get me in the mood. And I love the darkness. I love the silence, that absolute quiet at night where I can just really focus on the writing. So yeah, it revolved around that selling period, really.
Now, I've had several indie authors come out and mention that they know that they can probably only sell maybe 100 books. And that's probably the max they're getting for a book that they're writing. I don't know how many you have sold, but probably a lot, I'm guessing.
I just surpassed 3,500 copies in 6 months this last week.
Nice.
Yeah. So
Do you think that is because of your set schedule and how you are on social media and what you do on social media?
yeah, it's 100% behind that. I mean, my book can be purchased at Amazon. I have constant Amazon sales they fluctuate, of course. I also try to tailor it so that people come to my TikTok shop as my main store. That's where I sign the books. That's where people can get the painted edged books now. I do little incentive things. I throw little stickers in there of the book cover. These are things that they can get there. The Amazon sales happen, but when TikTok really started exploding for me, I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is the social media platform. I tried Instagram. It wasn't moving as, but once I started going live on TikTok, I'm gaining 200 to 300 followers a day, just people watching my lives. They come to my show from the For You page. I always look at my statistics after the show. 98 of the people come from the FYP, and they're just like, hey, what's this? Like, is this a movie? Is this a book? What do you got going on? So I got to do my pitch. I have to sell it. And that's what the algorithm is. These new people coming in, and the algorithm is smart, knowing that I'm seeing that person is a book, and they are books. They like horror and romance books, and so it just absolutely exploded in the beginning when I started putting the hours into TikTok, and I didn't have a supply. I didn't have enough books to actually build the orders. And TikTok has they have a really tight turnover time. It's like 2 days after you make an order, you have to get a book out within 2 days, or they take a chunk out of your shop in terms of like they penalize you. So there was a lot of rough stuff in the beginning. It was rough, but I feel like I've got a good conveyor belt going. I know when to order my books. I have that. So, but yes, TikTok was a game changer when
Definitely. That is actually where I found you, and that is where I purchased one of your books as well. Have it here. I purchased it right from the TikTok shop. I guess TikTok really is the place to be for when you're doing like writing books. But I am kind of curious because supposedly there's supposed to be a TikTok ban coming up. Are you worried about this, and what do you think you could do if this does happen?
Yeah, when I started hearing about that, excuse me, when I started hearing about that, I was really worried because I had just getting started, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I realized I could make a living off of this, and now they're going to take it away from me. And it was really, really hard because I was like, I built up the social media following there, and then what are my other options if it gets shut down? I have to go over, maybe try YouTube. I heard YouTube was a really good place to try it too, but I had never done it. Excuse me, I had never done anything on YouTube. So I really started reading a lot about the details of the possible ban and how the U.S. government was dealing with it. And yes, they pushed it through Congress, and the president signed it. But there was initially very worried. But then, as I read and educated myself more on it, I realized not to worry. Like, it's really not going to be a problem. The worst case scenario is that they would make an American version, and we would never notice the difference because almost all of my customers are in the United States. TikTok doesn't, I mean, this TikTok that I'm using right now doesn't they don't ship anywhere beyond the United States. So that's where it is. I feel like that is, from everything I've read and researched about it, that's a worst case scenario, and it will not go away. They'll just make an American version, and honestly, I don't think we would really even notice a difference. So I don't worry about it anymore. I think about it once a week probably instead of several times a day. So
Well, it's awesome if it definitely doesn't happen. That would be a great thing for so many small businesses and writers like yourself. I do know that TikTok created an app called Lemonade, and I do enjoy that, but it's not as big as TikTok. And TikTok is pretty awesome. A lot of people use it. It's one big platform. What do you think was your most challenging aspect of writing this book?
it was definitely holding the whole thing together. Like I said, over 7 years, probably the the most difficult time is when I had to shelve it for an entire year. I quit my career. I moved. Like I had all these, life things that were happening. And then when I decided to pick the book up again, I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't even remember what I wrote. How am I going to start? And I was, maybe 3/4 of the way through the first draft at that point. So I printed the manuscript out. I printed out all my notes, and it was almost like those detective shows where you see like the person sitting on the floor with all the evidence in papers sitting around them. That's what I was doing. I literally was like putting things in order. Okay, this goes over here, piecing the story back together, getting my head back into it, and that was a really hard time. But it was also that break was really good because I was able to look at it completely fresh. And as daunting and scary as that was, it got me through the rest of the book because I had stepped away from it and was able to look at it with fresh eyes. And I might have had some new ideas during that break when I really wasn't writing, and I was like, oh yeah, this actually works here. This works here. So that was hard, but it was also necessary. And I think what really helped me get through the novel was that break.
That's awesome. And so you quit your job to do this full time because right now it's doing amazing. And I just feel like that could be very inspiring to a lot of people because so many people are afraid of taking chances. And yeah, sometimes chances don't always work out, but in your case, it seems to be doing amazing.
Yeah, I was. I mean, I'm older. I'm 50. I'm calling it my midlife readjustment instead of a crisis. It's more like, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? I made maps, cartography for 25 years. That's what I got my degree in. I worked in cubicle office world, and I just got burned out from it. I got tired of it, and I was like, what do I want to do? And this book was right there, and I'm like, what can I do this? Take this and make something out of it. And there's a lot of people who try that, and there's a lot of people who try it and it doesn't work, and that's what really scared me. A lot of it was my own mind telling me you can't do this. It doesn't work very well for people. But I was just like, I don't care. I'm gonna do it. Like, even if this book is just finished for me, that'll be good enough. um, but it turned into so much more than that. And I'm so grateful for all the support I've gotten it's been out for 6 months. So just everything that has exploded. And of course, I'm very grateful to TikTok. Um, it has its own issues, of course. I've wrestled around with it with a lot of things, but it's I also like that platform because it's really good to the customers. They give the customers a lot of discount coupons. They give them free shipping regularly, and so they take my prices and they lower them, and they reimburse me for it. So everybody wins. Everybody's happy. Just as long as I get my books out on time, TikTok doesn't hassle me. They're cool with it. So
That is great. I love it. And yeah, I've noticed that there's a good amount of people who are just 30 years old and they just think that they can't change up their life. And they have like this need to change up their life, but they don't take any chances because they don't think that they can. But to me, I think that that's wrong. I think you can change up your life anytime you want, at any age. It doesn't matter. And if you want something, you should try to go get it.
yeah, it's a scary thing to step away from comfort and
Mhm.
take a step into the abyss. That's really what a lot of people are doing. And it's so much easier to stay in that comfortable world and maybe you're not as happy. But I knew what made me happy. And writing that book, like, brought passion out. It made me really happy. And I'm like, this is what I want. This is what I want to feel for the rest of my life. I don't want anything else. And so, yeah, it was scary. I quit that career. I had to do a lot of other jobs before things started taking off. So, and that also inspired me to work harder on the book because those jobs weren't so great. I drove for Uber, I drove for Lyft. I did a lot of gig work with my car. And that I was pretty miserable while I was doing it because I was like, I really want to write this book, and how can I keep doing this? And I remember when I first started, I was literally recording TikTok videos in my car during my breaks. So if you go back to my TikTok page, I'm in my car talking about my book. Like my proof just came out and it's like, hey, here's my book and it's going to be for sale soon. So it was inside my car during breaks. And like I said, that was a big motivator to be like, okay, this isn't how I want to live the rest of my life. I mean, it's paycheck to paycheck. I think things are really tight. And I was like, I want to reach for something more than that. And I will do whatever I can to make sure that happens. I always do the best I can. That's the best you can do.
I love that so much. I am only 20 years old, but that is where I want to be in life. I don't want to work 9 to 5s either. I just want it where I work on my own stuff and I just make it. That's what I wish for. So it's amazing.
Yeah, being a creator, being in control of all those things, it is a great feeling. I'm glad you're starting early. I'm glad you got that mindset early on, rather than going halfway through your life before you realize, hey, I need to make an adjustment. But life just kind of, sometimes things happen and you get swept away in it, and then you wake up and it's been 20 years, and sometimes that's just the way life happens to people. And so I'm glad.
Definitely. And what has your experience and process been like when you brought this book for publication?
Well, I did start out initially querying agents. I never approached a publisher. All the research said go do an agent first, and so it's an easier way into that world and a necessary way. A publisher is not going to listen to a cold call author coming at them. I've had those for centuries. Um, so I did query for a while. I use this thing online called Query Builder, I think was the website, and it kind of keeps track of who you're querying, and it's a database for who to query. Really well done, actually. And I probably did 50 query before I started getting research, and it was probably 2 months. And that's when I was like, I'm tired of waiting for somebody else to make a decision on this. Like, I don't like sitting around and waiting. I was feeling discouraged. I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe my book isn't that good. It was creating a lot of negativity for me personally, and I didn't want that. I wanted to just always be moving forward with this project. And so I said, forget it. I'm going to look at the self-publishing, and never looked back. And went to the Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing. They were the first place I went to, and it's really easy. It's really never been easier to be an author right now. So I had my cover done. My cover artist was expensive. I put that a lot of money into that cover to catch people's eyes, because I'm a big believer in a really strong cover, like a lot of people are. But a catchy cover, that's what brings people into my show. That's the first thing they see. Is I have my book usually sitting right here. You saw it. Um, People come in, they're like, "Oh my god, what is that?" So there's upfront expenses when you go indie like that. I had to pay for an editor and books. So I'm talking well over $1,000 just to start. But even beyond that, it's a really easy time. Like there's different levels. You don't have to spend that much money. You do pay less for a cover. And, but yeah, I got started on the Amazon, and then I buy my paperbacks come from there. My hardcovers come from a company called Lulu.com. They make beautiful hardcover books. I love the quality of them. I love the way they ship them, and they're never damaged when they get to me. That's a big deal for an author who's ordering a lot of books. Amazon, there's usually 2 to 3 damaged books per box, so the rate is very different. They don't really wrap them up that well. They're sitting on the bottom of cardboard. The box gets smashed by something. Some of the books get damaged. So I do sell discount books. A lot of authors do that. they give discounts on those books instead of like trying to send them back to Amazon. But yeah, so that's the process, and I'm continuing to use it. I also published on Ingram Spark, so that they're a huge distributor internationally. A lot of bookstores and the big ones, Barnes and Noble and Walmart and Target, the big box stores, they order from there too. So I always look where my book is. I'm in all those big stores. Thankfully, I'm thankfully with them, but so far only on their websites. So they're not aware of how many books I'm selling on TikTok. Nobody really is, other than Book Talk. And so I don't know when I'll be on their shelves or if I will be on their shelves unless I really come after them and be like, hey, look what I'm doing, look what I'm selling, look what the numbers are. I'm not really actually concerned about that. I'm enjoying handling the sales myself. I like being in control of everything and not necessarily depending on somebody else to sell my book or, another store. So that's one of those things is just kind of like, it'd be cool if it would sell okay there, but if it doesn't, I'm fine because I'm selling really well here on TikTok. So that's been the process.
Yeah, that's definitely great. And yeah, I am also one of those people who just love the cover. I know that statement, don't judge a book by its cover, but we all judge a book by its cover. It's not really easy to just not judge a book by its cover. So that is what drew me in, and the whole fact that it's horror because I love horror. So that those are what drove me in. Um, how do you handle negative feedback and have your reviewers met your expectations?
That's a really good question. The negative feedback was it was difficult when it started coming in. Uh, this is the first piece of art that I put out there that is public, and and I'm also publicly available on my live. So I have a lot of really weird people who show up on my lives and say weird things, and I have to deal with that. Just try not to take it personal, and also just more reading and educating myself on, even really good authors have great books and they have 1 stars. There's always some people out there who just don't like what you've written, and that's okay. So um, yeah, just trying not to take it personal, teaching myself I don't go and read the reviews really that much anymore. I look at the reviews on my TikTok shop because that's where most people go to review my book. I have 3 times as many reviews there as I do on like Amazon or Goodreads. So, and they're really positive for the most part. Those people have watched my pitch on my show. They know exactly what they're getting into. They realize, oh, there's some romance or some spice in this book. Some people who don't necessarily think it might just be a horror book and they see it advertised somewhere else or it's just sitting on Amazon, they'll buy it and they'll be like, oh my God, this book was offensively spicy. And they will give me a really bad review for that. And so I'm, like I said, I'm mostly just focusing on the TikTok portion of that. I try to send people to my reviews on TikTok if they're on the fence. I always advertise that on my show. There's, last I checked, there's 375 reviews there. Go check it out, like see what people are saying. So the difference between my shop and then the other folks who are reviewing it elsewhere, the reviews are very different. They really are. But I try not to read those ones on the other site so much because those people can be pretty nasty sometimes, and it can be discouraging, and I just want to keep going forward. Thankfully, there aren't very many people who come on the show and are negative. I'm certainly okay with criticism for people who come on the show. Like, I will listen to them as long as they're polite about it. Like, that's the main thing. I have moderators. I have 5 moderators now, and they handle everything. But if the people start getting rude, they will get kicked off. It's just pretty much that simple. But I can take criticism. We can talk about the book, certain things, and we do occasionally. But for the most part, people come on the show and they're really excited about it. They've read the book or they're reading it and they're having a good time. And they just wanted to let me know, and that's very inspiring, and I love that aspect of it.
It does suck that sometimes people are rude. We will find that a lot online though, especially if you are a content creator. Your platform, you have TikTok, so definitely going to experience some of that. I think it would always be better if we all just understood that not everything is everyone's cup of tea. And if you don't like something, you can just go and get something else that you do like. I test different genres all the time, so
Yeah, it's
and I think this is a wonderful book. I'm usually not the type of person that's really into history myself. I'm not a history nerd. It depends because some things I do like the history of, but I thought that this book was wonderful. So,
thank you very much. I appreciate that.
oh, dang, 40. Okay. Well, we should go down to our last couple questions here. All right. Um, can you share any advice for aspiring authors?
Yes, I get this asked almost every time I do live. There's always someone who comes on, and one of the things I love about what I do is because I'm publicly facing now, I've gone through some tough times. People see I'm selling the books. I have a lot of people asking for advice, and I really love to help people. I was a teacher for a period of time. I love just mentoring and teaching people and giving advice like what works, what doesn't work. So I'm constantly fielding questions about that. Emails, I get a lot of emails from people, from budding authors. Like, how did you do this? How did you deal with that? So that's another thing in my schedule I have to schedule, is just part of that advice section. But it depends on what they're asking for. But I always tell people when they're really nervous about, like, maybe the length of a novel, how discouraging that can be, 300 plus pages. Uh, I always tell them Stephen King's quote: "Write one page a day, and in a year you will have a novel." Just take, breaks down to baby steps. Just take one step at a time. Don't get wrapped up with how far you've got to go on the journey. Just focus on the here and now. What do you need to do today to get to the next day, and then the next day, one day at a time. And I give that advice a lot. It's Stephen King's advice. And I also give a lot of advice on writer's block. People ask me about that, and I just tell them, well, me personally, I don't write in order. I always write something. Like, if I'm stuck in a spot, I don't stay there. I move on to another part in the story, and I write that section because it's what I'm thinking about at the time. It's what I feel passion for. And then that's the other piece of advice: is write what you're passionate about, not necessarily what you know. You can know something when you read about it and you research it. Find a subject that's really interesting to you, do the research, inform yourself on it, and then if that's something you're really passionate about, write about that thing, because passion is really what gets you through that whole process.
That is some great advice. I loved it. Um, and you already talked about how you have plans for your next project, which your next book, I mean. Could you tell us just a little bit about it?
Yeah, so this is The Haunting of Chateau de Mornay's book one in the Haunting trilogy. I'm calling it tentatively because they're all going to have the title Haunting in them. I love the word haunting just in a book title. That will always grab me and pull me in. So the second book, it's blurred out right there, but I have the cover revealed. It's called The Haunting of Anna Stone. Anna Stone is the main character in the trilogy. And the second book picks up right where book one ends. I'm about 1/3 of the way writing it. I'm hoping for it to be released early next year. I'm having a blast with it. It's definitely more of a horror novel. I feel like it's creepier. overall creepier than the first book. There is some romance in there. The romance that's in there is darker romance, um, because just story wise, I have a trilogy. The second book is where you really put your heroine through really hard trials. That's what happens in the second act of any really well written story. And so the second book it's definitely going to be difficult on Anna. So um, it's her story, it's her trilogy. So I'm really I'm really anxious to unleash it on folks, because there's so many. I read so many, like on my Discord server. There's so many ideas about like what's going to happen next, like who's she going to be with, like what happened to this character, and I love reading it because so far nobody has even been close to what's happening with in my brain. So it's coming along really well. I'm having fun writing it.
I'm definitely really excited for it. I can't wait for that to be out. The last two questions. In what ways could the readers help you in your journey of writing? And have you had beta readers for your book?
You mean like beta readers, or just readers in general?
Beta readers, like before you published, did you have any group of people read your book and give you suggestions?
Yeah, absolutely. So that excuse me, that made a big difference. Sorry, excuse me. Um, Especially when I wrote the spicy things, I was intending to leave those out. I just wrote them in the first draft. I was really nervous about people reading those things. I had never written anything like it before. I had always wanted to, and I'd always wanted to write a horror novel that included those things. That was spicy too. There was a romance in it, because I just love the combination of all that. So I did have test readers. I had some folks I know who were erotica readers, who are writers, and I got a hold of them and asked them, "Hey, can you read this scene for me? Like, what do you think of it?" And that really, their feedback helped me greatly in terms of my confidence and validation. Leaving it in the book, they said leave it in. It's fine. Like, it's good. Um, and so that really helped a lot. I felt okay with pretty much my writing overall, and absolutely the beta readers and arcs really helped out with little adjustments, and maybe toning some stuff down. There was a little bit more intensity in the book at certain scenes, especially at the end of the book. It was a lot more intense, um, and I had a lot of feedback that just said tone that down a little bit. It's just a little too much, and but mostly it revolved around the spicy stuff. Was being confident enough to leave that in, because I was really nervous when the book was released about what people were going to say about that, because male authors don't necessarily have a super great track record writing romance stuff, and I've read all the stuff online, and there's a lot of bullying going on towards male authors, and I wanted to break that down. So I feel confident, and then I'm doing something good in helping break down that barrier that men can't write those things, and I feel confident in that, and so I'm glad to be, I guess, pushing through that barrier of we can all do these things. Like, anybody can write that stuff. It doesn't matter what who you are. If you know what you're talking about, you know what you're writing, and people are enjoying it, it's good. It's a good thing. So.
Oh yeah, I've definitely seen what they say about male readers writing romance. Um, Now I know you've said this already multiple times through this interview, but I always ask this at the end anyways. Um, which the question is, where can we find your books? And I think this would be great for you to also just shout out your social media as well.
Absolutely. If you're on TikTok, author Blake Andrew is my Blake Edward and author Blake Edward Andrew on TikTok. I'm easy to find. Um, there. I do have a website as well, and it's author Blake Andrew.
No space there.
Uh-oh.
Just dead.
It looks like while he was in the middle of talking, something happened.
It was like fucking 11 o'clock. Wasn't it so?
I don't know if I should wait for him and see what happens or if I should.
No, it's in that.
So yes, that was author Blake Edward Andrew. You can find him on TikTok, on website, on Amazon. And if you also want an interview with me, you can email me here at kingdomofhoursofficial@gmail.com.
I wish you would have said something before I said.
Okay, well, thanks for watching.
Yeah.